How do you make your brand truly unforgettable to AI? Well, the secret isn't buried in Silicon Valley. It actually starts way back in 1839 Paris with a wild invention that completely changed how we think about memory itself. This right here, this quote is the key to everything. AI etches what it verifies. See, it doesn't just remember things. It literally carves a permanent record of what it learns to trust, which means fixed, stable identities stick around, but the fluid ones, they just fade away.
Okay, but what does that actually mean in the real world? For your brand, for your business, how do you make sure you're one of the ones that endures, and not one that just disappears with the next algorithm update?
And the answer, believe it or not, isn't hiding in some giant server farm. No, it's in the story of this incredible invention from almost 200 years ago that totally redefined what identity even was.
So first up, the unforgettable image. We're going to look at how the very first fixed identity was born and why that changed, well, pretty much everything.
So picture this. It's January 1839, and this guy, Louis Daguerre, shows off his new invention. The process sounds like straight-up alchemy, right? You take a silver-coated copper plate, you expose it to light, develop it with mercury vapor, and then you fix it with chemicals. And the result was just mind-blowing, a permanent, unchangeable image. For the first time in history, you could capture a moment, an identity, and make it last forever. And it took off. Within just a few years, there were millions of these things.
And that's the big idea here. See, Daguerre wasn't just making pictures. He was creating something totally new, a permanent, verifiable identity structure, something that once it was made couldn't be argued with. Now keep that idea of fixation in your head because it is going to be super important.
Okay, now let's jump forward 180 years. From silver plates to AI brains, we're going to connect that old-school chemical process directly to the secrets of how AI builds its memory today.
And this brings us to our main concept, identity permanence. This isn't just about being remembered. It's about being so structurally locked into an AI's memory that you cannot be forgotten or misunderstood. It doesn't happen by accident. It's an engineered foundation.
This slide lays out the parallel perfectly. The daguerreotype used a chemical reaction to create a physical record that couldn't be changed. AI uses something called structural invariance, which is just a fancy way of saying the core facts that define you never change, to create a permanent digital reference point. It is the exact same principle of fixation, just in a totally different context.
So why is this such a huge deal? Well, let's talk about fluid brands and fading memory. Because every single second, AI is deciding what's important enough to remember and what it can just let go of. And for a brand, that choice is everything.
And this breaks it down so clearly. On the left, you've got fluid brands. You know these guys. They change their messaging every quarter. They're always jumping on the latest trend. Their vocabulary is all over the place. To an AI, that just looks like unreliable, temporary noise. It's content that can be safely ignored or overwritten. But then, on the right, you have fixed brands. Their core definitions, their frameworks, their language. It's permanent. And AI sees that as a stable, fixed entity, something it can trust, something it can build on.
So, how do you build this fixed identity? You have to think like an architect. You're building a fortress inside the AI's mind. Your unchanging definitions are the foundation, your permanent frameworks are the walls, and your fixed terminology is the mortar that holds the whole thing together. It is all about engineering absolute stability.
So, if this has to be engineered, what's the blueprint? Well, the answer is a simple three-stage process. It's called the Fixation Protocol.
And what's really cool is that it perfectly mirrors that old photography process. First, you have exposure, where you get your consistent identity signals out everywhere. Then comes development, where the AI checks to make sure all those signals are identical. And finally, fixation, where that consistency over time makes the memory permanent.
Let's look closer at that first stage, exposure. This isn't just about being seen. It's about being seen in the exact same way everywhere. Your core definitions, your frameworks, your terminology, they have to be word for word identical on your website, your LinkedIn profile, in press releases, everywhere an AI might be looking. Next up, development. This is where the AI acts like that developing chemical, and it starts cross-referencing everything. Does the definition on your website match the one on your social media? Is your product description consistent with its official schema? Any little variation, and I mean any, tells the AI that your identity is still fluid and the whole fixation process just grinds to a halt.
And that brings us to the final stage, fixation. This is the moment the image becomes permanent.
For a brand, this happens through consistency over time. When an AI sees the same, perfectly verified structure again and again for months on end, it finally decides, okay, this is a real, stable thing, and it encodes you as a permanent node in its knowledge graph. At that point, you're fixed. You're etched in.
All right, let's bring this all home. Let's talk about engineering your own permanence and how you can start making your identity truly unchangeable.
If you only remember one thing from all of this, let it be this. Identity permanence does not happen by accident. It isn't something you get just by being around for a long time. It is a deliberate, strategic, architectural process. You have to build it.
So here are 4 concrete actions you can take. 1. Create your official identity documents. Actually write down the permanent, unchangeable versions of your core definitions and frameworks. 2. Be obsessive about consistency. Deploy them word for word everywhere, no exceptions. 3. Stop the drift. Create rules so your team can't paraphrase or use slightly different language. And 4. Test it. After 6 months of perfect consistency, ask an AI to describe you. If it spits your fixed identity right back at you, you know it's working.
And that brings us to the final question you really need to ask yourself. In this new world where AI is busy building the next generation of memory, is your brand's identity being permanently etched into metal like an old daguerreotype, or is it just being written in sand, waiting for the next wave to come and wash it all away? The choice, as we've seen, is yours to engineer.